So now UBS has the task of restoring investor confidence. Again, let's think about what it needs to do. We've got Bernhard Bauhofer returning to Counting the Cost. He's from Sparring Partners in Zurich, a firm that deals in corporate reputations and crisis management. Bernhard, thank you for your time. I'm not going to say I feel sympathy necessarily with UBS, but when you're trying to stop one person who's acting out like this, it's not the easiest thing in the world if someone wants to do that. However, I guess there've got to be some checks and balances within the bank itself.
Yes, of course, and I think it's anyone who would lead UBS's financial services giant would have huge problems and wouldn't know where to start. In fact, as you mentioned, UBS has a long tradition of crisis. It's an ongoing crisis since 2008. People are getting nervous. Stakeholders are really pushing on the management to make fundamental and sustainable changes. UBS isn't getting out of the crisis. Shareholders are getting nervous. People within the company, staff they are now really completely upset and disappointed. They're facing big cut downs and seeing while in UK there's a casino-like gambling with money. So there's a huge frustration, huge pressure from stakeholders all over the world of the management. You don't need to have sympathy with the management, but it's really quite a hopeless situation for UBS at the moment.
How would you describe UBS's reputation now? As we've both pointed out now, it's had problems in the past, clients left the bank in the past. How would you describe its reputation?
Well, for the moment, it's now really severely tarnished. It was shortly before this event yesterday. It was slowly but sustainably recovering from the 2008 subprime loan crisis, from the bailout from the government, from the tax dispute with U.S. authorities. But now there's a heavy blow, and it's hard to calculate what the consequences will be. I personally assume that the high net worth individuals, wealth management clients, will severely reconsider if they want to stay with UBS, the largest wealth manager in the world, or if they just don't want to accept this high-risk policy UBS is playing on the investment arm side.
You know, in the UK last week, there was this talk about ring-fencing retail segments of banks away from the investment side. Is that the type of thing which could possibly need to happen at UBS? Do you think regulators would start considering that in places other than the UK?
Well, this has been the discussion after the 2008 crisis, and it would have made sense, particularly in the case of UBS. UBS has its core competency in wealth management, and we know the high net worth individuals, particularly after the 2008 crisis, are extremely defensive, risk-averse. They don't want their bank to getting involved in high-risk businesses. So separating the business, the retail banking and the wealth management business from the investment banking business, or completely splitting off or selling off the investment banking would have been a good choice for UBS in 2008. The management around Mr. Krübel and Mr. Kaspar Villiger decided to stick to the integrated business model, keeping the investment banking, and now we're seeing that this is certainly was a mistake.
Bernhard, you deal in crisis management, and UBS is arguably in a crisis. Now, let's say I'm UBS and I hired you and I said, right, I need a fix here. What would be the most important, number one thing you would be recommending to them in this situation now?
UBS is a poor communicator. The management is just rejecting calls from journalists. I talked to a couple of journalists from all the world yesterday, and it's just poor communication policy. UBS, first of all, has to communicate in very short term, constantly, ongoingly, and what's going on their investigation on the case. It's important for the financial community, for the shareholders to understand that UBS is really determined to get to the bottom of this problem and not try to hide anything. And that's exactly what UBS has done over years, and they haven't learned from the 2008 crisis. They need to implement a modern and transparent communication policy.
Bernhard Bauhofer, pleasure talking to you again. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.